Hello and welcome to IELTS Writing with Nikki. My name is Nikki and I recently wrote the IELTS exam in February 2026 and achieved a band 8.0 overall with a band 8.0 in writing. And in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 things I did differently that helped me achieve the score in my IELTS writing exam. It is generally known that of all the 4 modules in the IELTS exam, the writing module is considered the toughest and most challenging section and usually has the lowest band score, with the average score of most candidates ranging between 6 and 6.5. This has given birth to fears in a lot of candidates. It has made a lot of people nervous, anxious and afraid of the writing exams especially. So before we go into today's video, I want to take a few moments to just alleviate your fears about the writing exam. I like to believe that just like every new skill, subject, course or something you're learning for the first time feels difficult at first until you learn the heart behind it, then you realize how very easy it can be. The same thing applies to the IELTS writing exam. It might look pretty difficult from a distance, it might look pretty difficult, when you have yet to master it, but the moment you get the strategy, the approach and the technique behind it, you find out how very easy it can be. And this is what I'm going to be doing in today's introductory video and subsequent tutorials on this channel. I'm going to be taking you on a step-by-step journey to how you can ace your exam in one sitting, whether you're taking it for the very first time or you're trying to retake it again. We're going to be looking at a lot of practice questions, specific phrases and words that you're expected to use in your writing that will take your writing from a band 6 to a band 8 and band 8.5. If you follow the strategies I'm going to be sharing on this channel, you are guaranteed of a minimum of 7.5 in your writing exam. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's video. First thing I did while preparing for my IELTS exam that I believed helped my performance is to learn the IELTS language and approach. Yes, you might have heard people say that the IELTS writing has its own language and approach. It is true. The reason most people end up with a band 6 or 6.5 is not necessarily because their writing is bad, but because you have ignored the standard IELTS approach to answering questions. You have ignored the IELTS language in your write-up. Okay, so rather than getting a better score, rather than getting a better band, you end up with an average score, an average performance. Now when I say IELTS language, I'm talking about specific phrases, specific words, specific English terms, approach that you're expected to use when writing. It's just like let me use this analogy. It's just like going for a cooking competition and cooking plain white rice instead of when you can actually spice it up. You can add veggies, you can add carrots, you can add probably chicken, you can add green peas, something to spice it up and make it into a fried rice, right? So when you ignore those things, okay, you have just done average. When you cook white rice, when you can actually make fried rice, you have done average. Now the problem there is that there is nothing wrong with your white rice. Your white rice tastes great, the salt is perfect, everything is fine, the texture is perfect. There is nothing wrong with the white rice, but then there is room for improvement. You could have done better. Okay, so when you get a 6.5, the problem, when you get a 6 or a 6.5, the problem is not necessarily your writing. The problem is that you have ignored some ingredients, you have ignored some phrases, some terms, some approach, some patterns that you could have included, you could have imbibed in your write-up to take you to a band 8. And these are the things that I'm going to be pointing out and explaining to you in our tutorials. I'm going to be pointing out everything you need to know, the things you need to watch out for in your writing, the things you need to include in your writing. Okay, so if you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out. Okay, I make bold to say that I have mastered the IELTS writing pattern, and you can see that from my score, my results, and going to be teaching you everything that I know. Okay, everything that I know to help you achieve your dream score in your writing. Okay, the second thing I did is to study a lot of examples on different topics. Yes, there are certain topics of interest that IELTS question often revolves around. Topics like pollution, topics around health, around family, around work, around technology, around transportation. Okay, when we start the practice questions, you see the pattern in which this question comes. Now, the important thing that you have to note here is that it's not just about the number, the quantity of practice questions that you do. It is important that you ensure that your practice questions covers varying topics, not just focusing on one topic of interest. For instance, focusing on just education, or focusing only on health, or only on questions that pertains to family. Okay, but when you practice questions that covers all of these topics of interest, what this does for you is that it prepares you to be able to handle any question type that you come across on that day. One of the challenges that most candidates face on the exam day is idea generation and development, but when you have practiced enough questions on all these topics that IELTS covers, there's a 99% chance that whatever question you'll be coming across on that exam day would be something similar. Okay, will be something similar to what you have practiced. Then you can easily pick ideas from what you have practiced at home and infuse it in your write-up for your exam. Okay, so this is what practicing several questions does for you. It prepares you to face any question you come across on your exam day. It broadens your knowledge. It helps you learn ideas that you can use in your write-up, and then it builds your confidence level, which is very important. Okay, you need to go into your exam hall with enough confidence and courage as possible. Okay, with as much confidence and courage as possible. Okay, you don't want to go into your exam hall scared, afraid, fidgeting, anxious, or nervous. No, that is already set up for failure. Okay, so you need to practice a lot of questions, familiarize yourself with the questions, and then go into your exam hall with confidence. Now, what I do personally is that on average I study 5 examples each on each of the essay types in tax 2. Okay, we have 5 essay types in tax 2 that I've already listed on the board. So on average what I do is that I do 5 examples each, and that makes it 25 questions in total that I studied. Okay, for some of them, I think for opinion essay and advantage and disadvantage, I think I did only about 3 questions each, because they were less complex. For the more complex ones, I did about 5 questions each, so that I can understand it better. Now that's average of about 20 questions. Okay, 20 practice questions on varying topics. Now after studying 20 practice questions, it will be very difficult, okay, it's nearly impossible for you to come across any question on that day and be unable to write something about it. You would have great ideas to write about. Okay, the question might not come in exactly the same pattern, but you can use the ideas, you can borrow the ideas. Okay, don't worry, we're going to be looking at all of these things in details when we start our practice questions. Okay, so that was the second thing that I did. Okay, and it really helped me on my exam day. The question I came across was a question that I had that I had already practiced, was something that I already practiced, something very similar to. So I only needed to take the ideas from what I did in my practice question and infuse it into the question I had for that day. Okay, and I finished my tax 2 question on the exam day. I finished it in 20 minutes. I was checking the time. I finished it in 20 minutes, and I finished my text 1. My text 1 took a longer time, okay, because it's more of a personal something. Text 1 is more personal write-up, okay, and it took me around about 30 minutes to complete. Yes. And at the end of the day, after doing my revision, reading through and checking for punctuations, checking for spellings, I had 5 minutes left. 5 minutes doing nothing for writing exam. I had 5 minutes. I wasn't typing, I wasn't reading, I was done, and I was just waiting for the time to count down. Yes, I was surprised myself on that day. I was surprised. This is not a bluff. I don't need to impress. I'm not doing this to impress or sugarcoat or something. My results can speak for itself, right? And it's something that I believe that you can also do, and you can even do better than my results following my strategies. Okay, I'm going to be sharing all of these in that tutorial questions. All you just need to do is to turn on your notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our lessons. Now let's go into the third thing that I did while preparing for my exam. Now the third thing that I did while preparing for my exam is quite personal. It's personal, it's something that works for me, and I'm just going to be sharing it in hopes that it will work for you as well. And this is to always start my learning from the most complex one, the one that seems most complex or most difficult. Okay, like I said earlier, we have 5 essay types and I've listed them on the board, and I listed them in order of how easy they are. Okay, the opinion essay is the easiest, then advantage and disadvantage, and then down to the most complex. So you can see that the last one has about 3 subsections under it. Yes, now I learned from the most complex to the easiest. Why? Because once I get the most difficult one out of the way, it builds my confidence level. It makes me, it psychologically tells me that if I can do this very difficult one and I get it and it's clear to me, then the other ones I can face them head on. So at the beginning of my learning, when my energy is still high, when my level of interest is still high, I start from the most complex one. Okay, so in our tutorial videos, we are going to be starting from double questions first. Okay, before we go to discuss both sides, then advantage, also disadvantages, like that. That is how we are going to be starting. We're going to be starting from the most complex one first. Okay, like I said, this is quite personal, but it worked for me. I hope that it will work for you too as well. The fourth thing I did while preparing for my exam is to study my practice question, to take time in studying my practice question. There's this saying that goes, it is not how far but how well. Yes, it is very important. It's not just about the numbers of practice samples you are able to do. It is about how well you know those few that you are able to do. I took my time to study every line, every word, every phrase. Okay, and that helps my understanding. It builds my understanding about the writing exam. So do not be in a hurry to do so much. Sometimes I use 2 to 3 hours to study just one practice sample, and this is because I want to take my time to learn the IELTS language. When I see unfortunately, when I see significantly, when I see regrettably, and then you notice patterns. When I see words like conveniently, okay, certain words that appear often, certain words, certain vocabularies that are often used to express things, okay, adjectives and adverbs that I use often in essay and letter writing. Okay, you take your time to understand them, to understand the choice of words, to notice words that I used repeatedly. The last thing that I did while preparing for my exam that is very essential and important is to avoid using too many tutors, sources, or study materials for your preparation. Avoid using too many tutorials, too many tutors, too many study materials, because this can leave you confused and mess up whatever you know already. Okay, during my preparation, I used I think just 2 sources for my preparation. Okay, because I realized that using so many tutors would leave you confused, because every tutor has their own approach, okay, towards writing. Every tutor has a unique approach, and trying to combine 5 different approach can leave you confused. So just look for tutors or source materials that resonate with you, okay, and stick to them. Okay, and you can also make use of articles. Okay, I'm adding this to the 5th point. Another thing that I did is to also read articles. Okay, I read articles about the topics of interest that IELTS question revolves around. Okay, every night I read articles. On some days I read on technology, some days I read on AI, some days I read on remote work articles on office job versus remote jobs. I read on homeschooling versus the normal schooling. When we start practice questions and then you see the patterns that they come in, you see the forms that they come in, then you can look for articles on such topics and read them. This will really help you to also in idea development and building. Okay, So those are the 5 things that I did while preparing for my IELTS exam. I hope that this video has been helpful to you. If it has been helpful to you in any sort of way, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification bell, and you can share this video with your loved ones that are also preparing for the IELTS exam. In my next video, I'm going to be starting the tutorials officially. We're going to be starting first with the task 2, which is essay writing, before moving to task 1, which is letter writing. The video promises to be everything that you need to ace your writing exam in just one sitting. Okay, so please subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.